Ultra.
Goes huge for Ultra, and they get their first home series victory.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Made in Esports. I'm one of your hosts, Spencer. With me is Chris. Today, I was scrolling through Twitter, and I came across a BreakingPoint.gg article that sort of inspired this episode for you guys today. So one, obviously go follow Breaking Point on Twitter. They do a ton of fantastic content, a lot of great stats. If you guys are a Call of Duty fan, Call of Duty League fan, you aren't following BreakingPoint.gg, I don't know what you're doing. With that being said, obviously, the topic I'm talking about today is sort of your mid-season MVP contestants and maybe your Rookie of the Year contestants.
Yeah, I think Rookie of the Year is a little bit of a good one as well, because I think one of the big trends of this season has been bringing rookies to really elevate your team.
I think it was there last season, I'll be honest. Again, I go back to, you see what Mac was able to do to New York. You see what Awakening was able to do to Florida. You see what Draws and Hollow were able to do to OGLA, right? Like, I think it became pretty apparent last year that was the direction that we were going to see moving into this year, and I think some teams picked on it. CleanX as well for Toronto. Like, how am I forgetting that? But I think some teams picked up on it a little bit earlier than others, and I'm not surprised at all. We'll see if it translates to LAN. I know there's some people in the community who are worried about that. I myself am not, but we'll see. I can't eliminate the possibility. And it's a really competitive category this year.
Yeah, exactly. I tend to agree with that. Which one do you want to start with, the MVP or?
Let's start with MVP. That's the big one.
Yeah.
That is, I think, the meat of this article. Actually, I think they just talk about MVP, and we're kind of talking about Rookie of the Year. But yeah, so if you go to Breaking Point, the names that they bring up, I mostly agree with. The three names that are sort of like the big ones to watch are Abezy, Clayster, and Insight. And I don't necessarily agree with Insight for this particular one for MVP, but I think Abezy is my number one pick right now. I know you could make an argument, I think, for any single person on FaZe, and I would be hard-pressed to disagree with you. I just think that I've always given Abezy, I think, the most amount of credit because I think he plays the most difficult role, right? He's able to put so much pressure on the map. He's running that entry-level position, and that's no disrespect to RC, Cellium, or Simp, right? All three of those, I think, are in that conversation for the best in the game at their particular role. I just think that the things that Abezy is able to do are so incredibly difficult and so incredibly important for team success that he's always impressed me the most, just because, again, the speed at which he's able to play and the ability at which he's able to slay.
That sounded really nice.
I know, but no one. I thought about that one a little bit, but he truly, I think, separates himself from a lot of other people in the league. And I mean, again, you go to BreakingPoint.gg, you can actually see some of the stats that they have on there, and I believe his search and destroy is absolutely disgusting. His control kills per minute is absolutely disgusting, and for right now, he is my sort of number one for MVP.
I'll also say that I think what separates him apart from the other two kind of main contestants in Insight and Clayster isn't necessarily the peak too. It's just that he's so consistent over all three game modes, like hardpoint, control, and search. Clear with his search from a stats standpoint, at least, being some of the best. But we're seeing, with Clayster, still amazing. Not as strong, on control, and same with Insight. Insight still some great stats on hardpoint S&D, but his control is struggling a little bit compared to the other.
Well, I think we're just looking at the pure stats. Like, I don't want to say Insight's control is struggling because literally Toronto won 13 controls and are like, how do you say his control is struggling when his team hasn't lost? They've lost like one map in their last.
I just mean in context of MVPs.
Yeah, I know, but I would argue that of the teams, he has the best control. Like, Clayster, I agree with, because New York, I think control is their weakest game mode. But I think the only person in the league right now, or in this, anyways, Toronto has like the best control in the league right now, I think, next to like FaZe. So I wouldn't knock his control. I just personally don't think Insight's like the best player on Toronto. I think Toronto's a very good team effort, but I do think that if I put someone from Toronto, I think personally I would have included Cammy. And I know if you scroll down to the bottom of the article, they include Cammy and CleanX, but yeah, I mean, maybe his, like, again, kills per 10 minutes is, you look at that number, right, and you see it's red at 16.8. That's low in relation to a lot of other people in the league, but at the same time, you got to take into account that his team's won 15 of their last 14 controls, so clearly he's doing something right.
He definitely enables the rest of this team, but I feel like MVP is like, I think more stats based, and less like soft skills kind of based. If that makes sense.
I
When people
almost disagree. We're putting Clayster in this category. I think Clayster brings part of the reason why I think Clayster's an MVP. Obviously, it's what he's doing in the game, but I also rate his soft skills and his leadership very highly. Like when I talk about
no, it definitely is a factor, but I feel like hard skills are first. Like hard stats come first when it comes to rating MVPs. We're getting into the woods though. Getting a little bit into.
I was say I wouldn't even include an insight on the MVP list. Like he was the one who I thought that maybe shouldn't have been on the top 3.
Yeah, I understand that. Maybe it's just because he's had such a massive impact.
He's been great. Like don't get me wrong. This is not a. I love insight. I think the whole team of Ultra could potentially be on that MVP list. I just think that if I had to pick somebody to stand out, which I'll get to in a bit, I think it'd be Cammy.
That's what I'd say. I feel like Cammy. I feel like between Kleenex and Cammy, I feel like Kleenex has a little bit of like a higher ceiling in terms of having that truly carrying pop-up potential, but Kleenex has more. I feel like more consistency over time.
I almost disagree. I almost think that Kleenex has the higher takeover potential. Where there's moments where I'm like, man, Kleenex is absolutely frying and like taking over this map. Whereas I think Cammy's been more consistent. There's some times where Kleenex.
That's what I said.
Oh, then I think you flipped it. I think you said. I think you got the names mixed up. I think you thought you were saying that, but I think you said Kleenex was more consistent. Either way. So anyways, we're in agreement. Yeah, I do agree that when Kleenex hits his ceiling, I generally think he is like the second best submachine gun in the game. No, sorry, I shouldn't say that. But like of his kind of position, what I kind of consider, I think he's in that conversation for like a top 5, top 4 submachine gun in the game when he hits his ceiling, like behind your like Simply Abezy's. Like I seriously think he's that good. When he reaches that peak, the problem is obviously he doesn't always reach that peak, but I think Cammy's just been so consistent all year long, especially if you go into Modern Warfare. Like when I think about this team and who's kind of had those big flashy plays consistently over map to map, I do think Cammy just notches it out only because I think like when you do talk about MVP, you're right. Sometimes like the flashiness and the stats are sort of what like put somebody above somebody else, and even though I think Kleenex does the dirty work, it's just easy to give it to Cammy when he's putting up so much consistent damage. Across multiple different series, across multiple different modes.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it also like kind of like a name to mention too is Kenny. I feel like he could be in that chat conversation if LA had been doing better.
I totally agree. I think Kenny's played some phenomenal Call of Duty, right? And this is the Kenny who struggled a little bit last year during the regular season. I know at the Champs, when he finally got to Texas, obviously he popped off, and obviously was a phenomenal talent coming from World War II to Black Ops 4. And I think Kenny's seriously been one of the best ARs in the game this entire year. It's just it's hard to really, when you talk about I think the big 3 teams that we've seen so far, it is FaZe, New York, and Toronto over the first 3 stages. LA Thieves haven't really hit that ceiling where like Toronto's won a major, New York's came second at a major, and now again it's they still can. If they're able to reach that, I think I agree. Kenny will sort of slither his way back into that conversation by the end of the year. Like if LA Thieves goes on a run, has a really good stage 4, stage 5 in champs, I do think he's worth shouting. I just at this point, I personally have it Abezy, Clayster, and Cammy.
Yeah, same. I agree with that. Let's move over a little bit more to Rookie of the Year. And I think this is a really good conversation because we've seen a lot of really, really great rookies come up and make a name for themselves in this Call of Duty scene and really not only kind of perform well, but almost change teams fully around. I mean, I'm not even talking about Toronto with Insight. I'm also talking about freaking New York subliners with Hydra and to a lesser extent, I'd say ASIM too.
No, it's Standy.
No, sorry, Standy. Standy on
Minnesota.
Broker.
You're getting ASIM from. Yeah,
I'm getting.
I was like ASIM played on Minnesota last year. That's okay. Yeah. Standy.
Yeah, that's what I was. Less so Standy, but more thinking of Hydra and Insight too. Am I missing anybody?
I mean, there's other rookies obviously, but I think when you talk about like PaulEhx has shown some great flashes, but is on a bit of a worse team. There's a few Neptune's had some great moments. There's a lot of different rookies. I'm sure I'm missing some, but I think when you talk about like the big ones, who kind of stand out as that like Rookie of the Year conversation, I think it's a 2-horse race. I agree. I think it's either Insight or Hydra. At this point in time, I'm leaning towards Insight because Toronto was like, I'm not going to put that change all in Insight. Like Toronto's improvement wasn't just on Insight. I think Cammy and Kleenex improved their consistency, and I think Bans was able to figure out how to mix up his like rowdy play style with providing more map pressure and getting those trades. But very clearly, like Toronto in stage 1 to what Toronto looked like in stage 2 and stage 3 was a drastic difference where obviously New York struggled in stage 2 and Hydra coming in I think is a big reason why they've reached the ceiling that they've reached. They were a very good team in stage 1. And obviously you got a guy like Clayster who I generally think is, again, able to do so much. And in that MVP conversation, you got like Mac who was in the Rookie of the Year conversation last year. Like I think that Hydra probably should be in that conversation as well, and I understand maybe why you'd put him ahead of Insight, but I just think Insight's been able to do it more consistently. If Hydra's able to keep this up for the next 2 stages, and maybe New York wins a chip in stage 4 or 5 and they go into champs, then obviously we can reconvene. But at this point, I've only seen 1 stage of Hydra, where I've seen two stages of Insight. Now, with that being said, Hydra was my number 1 prospect going into the year, so like I'm not surprised that we were able to see it for 1 stage. I don't think in any way, shape, or form he's going to slow down. But still, at this point in time, if I had to do the voting, I just got to give it to Insight because of consistency. And that's all.
Yeah, I agree. I got to say that, we have seen more of him, so it's a little bit easier to know that he is a little more consistent. But I also don't want to deny the fact that Hydra has been playing well, even despite, New York, losing some matches. A great one is in the New York-Atlanta, finals for the major. Like, Hydra's the only one and I obviously, just looking at stats isn't like your one true tell, but he was the only one to actually have, positive KD in that game.
Yeah.
And
I'll just say, no, I agree. Like, Hydra's looked great. But I mean, like, New York's one of the best teams in the game right now. I think it really comes down to, are New York and is Hydra able to keep this up for the rest of the year? And is Insight and is Toronto able to keep this up for the rest of the year? And if the answer to those questions are actually both yes, I actually think Hydra might end up edging out Insight only because he has a bit of a flashier play style. Like, it is easier for your average fan to kind of go into the voting and your average, just person just to be like, oh, Hydra this, Hydra that, because of the fact that he has such a flashy play style. And when he does hit those pieces, it's incredibly flashy. Where Insight, a little bit slower, I think does like some little things right that maybe your average person won't pick up on. And so I do actually think that as the season progresses, it might lend itself to Hydra taking this, but at this point in time, and what Insight's been able to do and what Toronto's been able to do in terms of winning an actual chip, something New York and Hydra haven't been able to do, and then obviously going to a top 3 performance. And you know what? Like, let's see who wins that head-to-head, right? New York plays Toronto coming up, and I'm very excited to see how those 2 teams square off for one another. So,
with that,
I might give Clayster the edge over Cammy, but I'll give Insight the edge over Hydra.
Yeah, I agree with that. That makes sense. And guys, if you like what you're hearing right now, and if you have any comments, any thoughts on who you think is the top rookie and the top MVP, let us know down below. If anybody says other than Abezy, you're getting an immediate dislike.
No, yeah, exactly. It doesn't immediately shut down. No, there's some great players this year, so it's been a good year for Call of Duty. But yeah, as always, guys, thank you for watching. Let us know your thoughts down below, and enjoy.